One of the most important consequential archaeological discoveries of all time, the Dead Sea Scrolls, might be older than we initially thought, according to new studies with artificial intelligence. So to break this down, let's bring in Danny the Digger Herman. So Danny, first off, why is the age of the Dead Sea Scrolls so important?
Well, for one thing, it's important to prove that they are 2,000 years old at least in order to connect them to the time frame of the Second Temple period, to the time frame of Jesus, of John the Baptist. And frankly, that was done already in the 50s when they were discovered. There were linguistic experts that already suggested, at first look at those manuscripts, that they're not medieval, they're not, Renaissance or Byzantine. They go back to the time of Jesus, which was, so sensational. And then carbon-14, which was just shortly discovered before as a method of independent dating of organic material, it validated what was proposed based on linguistic analysis. They are indeed 2,000 years old and even more. Okay, the older publications of the Dead Sea Scrolls dated them, the oldest parts, to the time of the Maccabees. And this aligns with the big question of who do they reflect? Who is this group? How was it founded? They call themselves the Yaha. They follow the philosophy of teacher of righteousness. All sorts of theories and opinions, but they always said, okay, it all started in the time of the Maccabees.
Right.
And now,
yeah.
now we have a whole new insight,
right,
that maybe it's older than we thought. So we
right,
need to go back to the drawing table of how do you explain them?
Right, which is so exciting to me as an apologist, a Bible nerd. I talk about the Dead Sea Scrolls all the time, just because it validates the idea that, people say the Bible's been changed so many times. Well, you have the Dead Sea Scrolls, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think you have a copy or at least a fragment of every book in the Hebrew Bible except for Esther. I think that's correct. Correct me if I'm wrong. And It hasn't really changed. So that's just, I love it. Okay, let's talk about this new thing with AI. What is this artificial intelligence telling us about the Dead Sea Scrolls?
Well, first of all, I'm not an AI expert, but from what I read, and the research is still ongoing. It's not like final results have been produced and published, but it seems to suggest that based on the style of the writing, that there are more phases in the sequence of when the Dead Sea Scrolls were written. It's quite clear that the latest of them, the youngest, had to be prior to the Roman destruction of the Holy Land. They were all concealed shortly before, apparently, the 10th Legion arrived in that scene, and the people of Qumran hid them and ran for their lives, and no one lasted. No one came back to retrieve them. But what are the oldest of the older parts of the Dead Sea Scrolls? So again, in the past, they assumed that they started collecting those scrolls, and they relate to the foundation of the Yachad movement in the 2nd century BC, which is the time of the Maccabees. Okay, and maybe that group was created due to certain political events in Maccabean time. I really like the theory that the founder was actually a priest, or maybe of a high priest, thrown off position in Jerusalem. So in return, he revenges and creates this movement that rejects the temple and the way it's operated. But if AI suggests that the oldest scrolls actually go back to the 3rd century BC, we need to propose a scenario that the movement began in the context of some events of the 3rd century, early Hellenistic times, which is a whole different game ball.
Wow. Well, that's just really exciting, because if we're talking 3rd century BC, we're getting closer and closer to, a couple hundred years after Daniel and the Babylonian exile. We're getting really, really, really old, which again, to me, as an apologist, and call me biased, just is so exciting as a Bible nerd. Speaking of Bible nerds, speaking of being in the land of the Bible, Danny the Digger Herman, you are definitely a fan favorite. And lastly, we have to know, how are you doing? How is tourism? How are things in Israel for you right now?
Well, as you all know, October 7th, 2023 has changed things dramatically, including to the tourism. And the ability to come here to the Holy Land and tour in a proper manner. But I'm happy to say things are catching up. More and more air flights are resuming their flights. Delta, United Airlines now, and a few European companies. And I'm glad to say I'm getting new proposals on daily basis. So I'm optimistic, and it looks like things are going in the right direction. My big hope, of course, we'll cut a deal. We'll get to a certain resolution that will bring the hostages back, that will bring an end to all this misery. Amen and amen.
Amen. Amen. Well, Danny the Digger Herman, love you so much, my brother. Thanks again.
Thank you, Raj. God bless you. Bye bye.